Welcome to Joint Session Diverse Voices in New York State Cannabis, the podcast where policymakers, legislators, thought leaders, licensees, and advocates come to discuss the evolving landscape of cannabis in New York and beyond. I'm Herb Barbeau, former Director of Operations at New York's Office of Cannabis Management. Each episode, we bring you in-depth conversations with key voices shaping policy, business, and advocacy, plus expert insights on the latest developments impacting the industry. And now for the episode. Welcome to episode 14 of season 2 of Joint Session. This is Herb Barbeau, and in this episode we'll speak with Melany and Freya Dobson, sisters and owners of Hudson Cannabis. But before we hear from the Dobsons, let's take a spin around this week's news. The California Department of Cannabis Control posted a new RFP last week as it prepares for the next phase of its Real California Cannabis campaign. The department notes that it is seeking a dynamic advertising contractor with strong brand growth capabilities to produce and implement a factually accurate and culturally appropriate statewide cannabis education and legal consumption campaign. Specifically, they want a campaign aimed at both California residents and tourists that focus on empowering consumers with information that will help them understand the benefits of purchasing from the legal cannabis market and the harms of purchasing from the illegal, unlicensed market, including the dangers to public health and safety. Sounds like a good and necessary idea, New York. Also in California, the Department of Tax and Fee Administration released cannabis tax data this week for the first quarter of 2025, and for the most part, there are a few surprises. Cannabis sales have dipped since the first quarter of 2023, when CDTFA first started to break out cannabis sales from other taxable sales. In the first quarter of 2023, those sales were $1.15 billion, and in the first quarter of 2025, they were about $945 million. Governor Gavin Newsom is attempting to incentivize localities, the majority of which still ban legal sales, to allow for shops. If they do so, this could have the dual effect of shrinking the state's illegal market and boosting these taxable sales figures. The Marijuana Policy Project came out with 2 reports last week that put into perspective just how much tax revenue states have raked in from legal cannabis. According to one report, adult use sales have brought in $24.7 billion in tax revenue to 21 states to date, of which $4.4 billion came in last year. While adult use is legal in 24 states and D.C., sales have not yet started in Delaware and Minnesota, and sales are not allowed in D.C. and Virginia. This tax revenue has funded myriad programs from education and research to conservation and construction. At a time when federal funding cuts are putting pressure on state budgets, adult use cannabis taxes are bringing billions of dollars into states' coffers, said MPP Interim Executive Director Lauren Daly in an announcement about the report's findings. The other report looks to the potential tax revenue that Pennsylvania could see from legal adult use should PA legalize. MPP projects that the state would see more than $1 billion in tax revenue after 4 years of legal adult use if sales are taxed at a total of 16%. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein, a Democrat, announced this week that he is creating a state advisory council on cannabis to recommend a framework for legal adult use sales in the state. Stein's announcement also lifted the hood on some provisions he would want to see in the state's adult use law, such as the expungement of past convictions of simple THC possession and the investment of revenues in resources for addiction, mental health, and drug driving detection. The 24-member council will include representatives from the State Highway Patrol to the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. If Stein's effort is successful, it would be a rare example of a state leaping straight into legal adult use sales rather than starting with medical cannabis. The Minnesota Office of Cannabis Management held its first adult use license lotteries last week, marking a major step toward the launch of adult use sales. 3 of the lotteries held were for cultivator, manufacturer, and mezzo business, which were open to all applicants. The 4th lottery for retail licenses was open only to social equity applicants. All selected applicants still have several hoops to jump through, from background checks to local approval before they obtain a license. Regulators also announced that July 22nd will be the date for the retail license lottery that will be open to all applicants. Minnesota has already paved the way for tribal nations to gain a foothold in the adult use industry. On May 20th, Governor Tim Walz signed the first agreement with White Earth Nation, which allows them to operate sales both on and off reservation. In New York, Governor Kathy Hochul, in a bit of a surprise, replaced inaugural board chair Tremaine Wright and replaced her with Jessica Garcia, also a board member since the inception of the New York State Cannabis Control Board. Earlier this spring, the governor and legislature cut the chair's salary of $229,000. Despite that cut, Wright had expressed no interest in leaving her role. Last week, the New York State Senate approved the nomination of Garcia, who is the assistant to the president of the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. As always, thanks to Cannabis Wire for the news. Check out Cannabis Wire at cannabiswire.com. Sisters Freya and Melany Dobson are second-generation cannabis farmers and co-founders of Hudson Cannabis, based in Hudson, New York. Prior to launching Hudson Cannabis 8 years ago, they worked in cannabis farms in Northern California in Mendocino and Humboldt County. The Dobsons are proud to say that Hudson Cannabis produces and provides the best products and brands in the industry. They have a 500-plus acre campus just 2 hours north of New York City. In addition to cultivating their own flower, Hudson Cannabis also processes products for other brands, including 1906 and Lowell Herb Company. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. We're so happy to be here.
Well, thank you for making the time today. I know you guys are extremely busy. So now in my intro, I said that you're second generation cannabis farmers and launched Hudson Cannabis 8 years ago. We are now in the fourth year of New York's adult use market. So how does that add up? How do you get to 8 years?
Wow, I can't believe that we're in year 4 of New York's market. What takes us back 8 years is that we started as a hemp company back in 2017.
Now, Hudson Cannabis is well known for selling its dime bags, right? So why was it important to revive that old school item?
It's amazing that you mentioned the dime bags today because we actually launched our last dime bag of the season today, our Purple Unicorn. And it was really important for us to bring dime bags to market because we wanted to create a product that could be accessible by all types of people. And so there weren't any barriers for New Yorkers to try New York grown weed. Mm-hmm. So often legal cannabis opens up and it's a $60 entry point to try legal weed with an eighth. So we thought, hey, how can we get the product out there to as many people in a form that is known and is universal to cannabis and also nods to the legacy of cannabis and the way that customers know it.
And how successful has it been?
Wildly successful. We've sold over 200,000 dime bags, which is just amazing. I don't know the exact number right now, which I should, which is just amazing to think of all of those points of distribution and all of the flower that we grew getting in the hands of so many people here in New York.
Now, Freya, what was the experience like in California, and how does that compare to your experience in New York State?
It was radically different. Melany was living in Northern California prior to me moving out. I was actually a college student at the New School at the time and very unhappy in the city. And I drove out west and worked with Melany in Humboldt County. We lived in Redway and worked on multiple grows around Humboldt County, kind of operating between the illicit and legal markets. So there was a lot of characters. There's, of course, lots of characters in New York as well, but these are more, there was a lot of outlawish types or, country cowboys, if you will. So it was a firsthand look at an industry that had existed out there, since the 60s, that was kind of being, when I was there in 2017, and Melany was there 2016, 2017, there was it was right on the brink of recreational legalization. So you say there's a lot of friction between people who had been living off the land there and existing for many years, many multi-generation cannabis farmers, and then, big business coming in and kind of wiping out these legacy folks. So there was something also very heartbreaking about the time out there, as it was the end of something that had existed for many years and sustained a whole community and economy.
Mm-hmm.
And in this way, I think we both started to feel like it was time for us to leave too. Like we were outsiders, and so that there was kind of like a divine timing of us coming back east and getting this opportunity to work in Hudson, New York, where we founded Hudson Hemp on the same farm that now Hudson Cannabis is. But it gave us this really amazing firsthand look at a whole industry that has existed long before our lifetimes, and a lot of that knowledge has inspired me in the work that I do now, of like bridging this gap between agriculture and the culture of cannabis.
Now, I've had Brian Farmer, and we spoke a little bit about this before we began. Brian Farmer, formerly from OCM, speak about cultivation regulations in New York. So now, how does New York's testing requirements and quality control standards affect how you cultivate?
Well, for one, New York rolled out a program that allowed independent farmers to grow cannabis outdoors, sun grown, soil grown, which is very unique to New York. And through that regulation, also had to create testing standards that allowed for outdoor sun-grown product to safely make its way to the consumer. So that what that means for us is that from prepping our soil to growing the plants to harvesting, drying, and curing, to processing the product, we are doing so in a manner that we can assure we will pass testing. And most of all, we're concerned with mold and bacteria and yeast. And the complication in that is that when you're growing outdoors using organic or regenerative farming practices, you're often putting living bacteria, probiotics on your plants. You're applying that directly. And the problem with testing is that you cannot, it does not know good bacteria from bad bacteria. So safety in cannabis, in legal cannabis, is so important because that's the selling point, right? That people can trace their cannabis to the source transparently and know it's safe for consumption. There's a lot of development that still needs to take place to put testing standards in place that make sense for both indoor operators and outdoor operators, because what ends up on the plant and what is safe on a plant is different in those environments, just given the fact you're outdoors and there's a lot happening out there. So testing standards are ever changing and developing, and we expect that as we grow as an industry, both in New York and across the nation, we're going to be better equipped to put together testing standards that make sense depending on the environment that you're cultivating in.
Yeah. Are you able to have any input into those testing changes that are made?
Definitely. I would say that as operators, it's always a tug of war between operating and responding to the regulations and standards that are put in place, and then advocating and supporting and fighting for changes that make sense for the industry.
Mm-hmm. Now, Freya, how do you approach pest management, right, while maintaining sort of organic and environmentally sound practices?
Integrated pest management, or IPM, is really central to how we grow on the farm, and that's because in an outdoor environment, there are good pests and bad pests, or pests that will cause problems and potentially wipe out a crop. So from the get-go, we are trying to create an environment that is balanced so that an infestation wouldn't occur. So there isn't enough vulnerability to attract, a sort of infestation of pests. That said, it's prone to happen. So we start with the soil, with how we do everything. It all comes back to creating a living ecosystem in the soil so that our plants are really healthy and resistant to whatever sort of pest pressure might occur. So we start with the soil. We have indicator plants like marigolds and other plants that we plant throughout our field. And
So they're like canary in the coal mine kind of plants?
exactly. These plants will attract the sort of negative pests before they create an infestation across our field. We also bring in parasitic wasps and other sort of like fighter pilot pests we bring those into the fold to really help with the prevention. And then throughout the entire season, it's just a matter of monitoring. Each season, because we're outside, different things happen. For example, 2 years ago, there was wildfires out in Canada. We got a ton of very strange moths. We could have never predicted something like that in the winter. We could have never predicted, we're going to need to prevent against this thing. But after the ash fell, a bunch of strange moths came in, and we had to respond to that.
I know, and I remember that we got a bunch of orange sky in the city.
And I will say that Freya and I are not the cultivators. So the other piece of the puzzle here is that we have a group of farmers, Brandon, Curtin, Mac, who and Adam and the rest of the team who really know the land and really know what to look for so that before we have a problem, we have a solution.
And what about energy efficiency? That was a big concern at OCM to ensure that there were energy efficient practices in the cultivation.
Well, the best thing is growing under the sun and the moon. I don't know if that's exactly the energy you're speaking of, but that is the energy in which we use to grow our plants. So we cultivate in greenhouses and hoop houses and full sun, but we don't utilize any lighting system, and we're big advocates of keeping cannabis in living soil under the sun and the moon. The moon cycle actually dictates our planting and harvesting schedule, so we follow that lunar calendar, which there's a response in the soil of the water table, which plants are responsive to. And so that is I think our biggest win is that we are not cultivating indoors, and not to speak poorly of indoors, because there's benefit to that too. But for us, we really believe in the power of the sun and how our cannabis responds to being cultivated outdoors.
And to add to that, we really believe in a closed loop model. So what we see in nature is that nature doesn't have a waste. What isn't used by one organism is used by another. And so we've really tried to mimic that as much as possible in the field. So as Freya said, that really starts for us with responding to the power of the sun and the moon. And then it starts in the soil. really. We grow our plants through good soil, and we take waste material, natural waste material on our farm. We compost that. Uh, we pull leaves and male plants from our field, and we bring that back into the compost. The roots we sustainably remove from the field after the harvest. We put that back into our compost. And so we're always thinking, how do we limit the use of off-farm inputs? How do we pull the energy we need from the life that exists around us and the decay and the decomposition that exists around us? From there, we balance our system through necessary inputs that we have to take from like the external world. The goal really is, how can we create a complete living system on our farm? And then you mentioned our dime bags before. We do our best on the packaging side of things too. Our dime bags, yes, they are single use. What that also means is that they don't have a child-resistant additional component. So they're one material, and that material is made in the USA and landfill biodegradable. So we really see our dime bag as a beautiful example of a pretty sustainable product that also meets the needs of the regulations.
And what about water usage and consumption? How do you integrate that that practice?
Through our irrigation system, we're really we're blessed in that our farm is Old Mud Creek Farm, and so there is a creek that runs through it. So on the East Coast, different from the West Coast, we are blessed with water, and we are very measured about irrigating on a need by basis. And last year we were really blessed with not too much rain, so we were able to control, how much water the plants got, which was very, very good for us. And so being outdoors, we're able to just balance what the rain is providing us with what is needed for the plants, and we don't have the same water issue as you do in California.
Now, what challenges have you faced with banking, finance, obtaining insurance on your farm?
We have a great insurance company that we've been working with since
Great.
the days of hemp. And so they were able to really just evolve with us. Banking, we're blessed with the Hudson Valley Credit Union, shout out. So we've been able to work with the local credit unions. The challenge for us is that we don't have access to traditional forms of capital, working capital, which is very challenging, just given our needs as we're growing. And it is a restriction that is just difficult for all of us operators. And then the tax implications of 280E, and then you double that with the potency tax in New York State, and it's like having handcuffs, financial handcuffs. So it's not easy.
And actually, that was one of my questions: is how do you balance compliance requirements with maintaining profitability and a sustainable, business?
It's so hard. I mean, and then add into that equation just the fact that New York is an extremely competitive market. This is the demand state for the whole country in many ways. And not only do you have a lot of brands now in the legal market, but there's still a very lively illicit market as well. So getting to profitability is really about identifying those high profit margin, high demand product SKUs and automating as much as possible so that you can protect your margins, and bringing as much value based on the waste that we have. So, because we're at the heart, we're a farm, so it's all about value added products. I always think about dairy. If you're in dairy, selling the cheese is what's high margin. You don't want to get rid of all your milk because then you can't make cheese.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, I see the flour like the milk, and then things like hash and solventless extracts or specialized pre-rolls and vapes. That's the cheese. That's the high value, more shelf stable products, and they're high demand as well. So we create innovative products that hold their margin as much as possible. And it's all about also connecting with the customer, because you need your customer to want your product, so that your product is not just selling because of its price. It's selling because of its quality, because of its story, and because of the brand's connection to the customer.
And Freya, that's another question is, do customers care about the story? Do they care about sort of, everything that you've talked about in your practices to make this, the best sustainably produced product that you can?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it depends on the customer, just like in with any product that people purchase. Some people care a lot about the milk that they drink, and some people will just buy any milk from the corner store. But I've spent most of my career in Hudson Cannabis training staffs of dispensaries on our farm, on our farming practices, and on our products, and the integrity of them, and how they're produced, and how that affects the user experience, as far as the smell and the taste and how it looks, and ultimately how it makes someone feel, which is really what we are passionate about, is as how people want to feel, given why they're going into a dispensary, and that is not a fixed experience, that is ever changing. So just like how we spoke to the moon affecting the plants, we also speak to the moon affecting people, but also just people, whether you want to buy into that or not, just that people, depending on what they're going through, are looking for different experiences, whether that's wanting to feel more creative, or needing to sleep, or pain management. So we really come at the angle of training staffs of dispensaries through that lens, and then that all of that goes back to the seeds that we're planting, and how we are farming those plants. So yeah, I would say there's a huge amount of people, whether they are new to cannabis, or coming back to cannabis, or experienced cannabis users, that are going into dispensaries and really looking to find out, like, how the plants are grown, and how something is going to taste, and various things. They're not just going in always to find like the cheapest product, or what's going to make them the highest. Of course, those customers exist too. But I would say we're really in like the infancy also of this market. So it's important to recognize that the majority of people haven't bridged that gap, like how it's been bridged in food and wine and other consumer goods, skincare. There's like, it's not in the like mainstream of cannabis to go in and think like, oh, how was this grown? Because most people's experience of consuming cannabis, if they've consumed cannabis, is buying it from a dealer. And if you were to ask your dealer, like, where did this come from? They would kind of be like, huh? So it's not like it's not natural in us yet. So that's why it's really great to come at it from educating the staffs of these dispensaries, so that we're putting, a lot in them to bring that experience to the customers.
Now, have you faced any, challenges that are particularly unique to women-owned cannabis businesses in New York, and how have you addressed them if that's the case?
That's such a good question. I think uh, there, because this is a new industry, uh, especially in New York, and that's the experience I can speak to. New York has done a remarkable job setting a table where you have a diverse set of independent operators invited to sit at that table.
Hmm.
That's not to say like the more corporate side of things isn't here. I'm always so surprised um, by the diversity that's in this market um, on the farm and supply side, down and across to the dispensaries.
Hmm.
And it's very heartening. Some of the uh, bigger entities in New York are women led. So that's really inspiring. That said, systemic, discrimination uh, just exists, and no matter what industry or market we're a part of, I can't speak too much directly to that other than to say personally, I'm often the only woman in the room, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to represent and to be that woman in the room, and to bring my feminine nature to leadership and to the work that I do. And I'm really proud of that. And I think part of the reason we've been able to be so successful, Freya and I, is that we're sisters. And so there's a lot of strength and confidence and camaraderie and real sisterhood in the work that we do. And we try to share that love with the team, with our team, with the dispensaries that we walk into, and with the customers that we meet.
Freya, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would say Melanie, being the helm of the ship, has probably experienced it to a much more extreme than me. I think um for me, I've been working in weed now since I was 20, and I'm gonna be 28 next week. So whether it's being a woman or being pretty young, I've definitely experienced just like the feeling of not being respected naturally. But that's, yeah, that I've tried to navigate gracefully, like through just kindness. And I never try to make assumptions about people, even if they're making assumptions about me. So I more am like try to just act how I would like to be treated in the world, and I don't try to be too affected by other people's experiences, besides recognizing that hurt people. So yeah, it's always tricky navigating that. But I also recognize that I'm in a very unique position in my life and my work, that I that happened to me and with me, but I didn't always necessarily like I didn't grow up thinking like I'm gonna be an owner of a cannabis company in my 20s. And so I also recognize the amount of privilege in that, and that my circumstances were very lucky in ways, and but I also worked very hard
Hmm.
in it.
I just have one thing to say because I do love what Freya just said about kindness and not making assumptions. I think that in this moment, we're all inviting a paradigm shift. And so rather than like rather than assuming that anyone is treating you one type of way because you're a woman or because of whatever it is, just dare to not make that assumption and to approach that person with as much kindness, because ultimately we want to move past all of this, and the systemic oppression that exists, and it takes a radical amount of self-love first and kindness to yourself to push through that and to do that.
Can I just touch upon one other thing?
Please.
Because you, in your introduction, you mentioned that we are second generation farmers, and then we didn't really speak to that, which is that Melany and I grew up on an organic farm in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts. Our father has been a cannabis and salad green vegetable cultivator since the 80s, and brought back his seeds from Mendocino in the early 80s. And so it was very much like part of our childhood, cannabis, while it was also, very taboo and created like some shame in us, just given the culture around cannabis when we were growing up, and the community that we grew up in. But that like bridge between it being an agricultural crop and then a consumption good came to us early, whether we had the language or not to express that. So I just wanted to touch on that point, that in all of this, maybe it wasn't so random that we also like landed here. It is a part of a larger family story.
No, and I'm sure your dad is super proud of you too.
He is. He's a happy man. Yeah, and to add to that, Freya, thanks for bringing that up. We really approach how we farm cannabis as a way to bring it back into the sort of Hudson Valley landscape, and to bring it value so that people demand and desire Hudson Valley grown cannabis. And the reason we want that is because that's what declares value for farmers growing cannabis. If people want cannabis that's grown in Mendocino and people want cannabis that's grown in the Hudson Valley, and they start to differentiate and value the differences in the cannabis they smoke based on where it was grown, then we really preserve value for farmers, similar to what you see in wine or coffee. And so much of the work we do in brand building, storytelling, is really aligned with that mission and the farm to table mission that our dad was a real leader in. So we hope to see a world, in 10 or 15 years where people are asking for Hudson Valley grown, flower, and they know it by the smell of it.
You can find us on Instagram at Hudson Cannabis, our website, hudsoncannabis.co, where we have a whole stockist section to find a dispensary near you, because we are sold in over 200 dispensaries across New York State. So surely there is one near New York, a New Yorker. I'm sorry for out-of-staters, but when you're in New York, you can find us.
All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to be a part of this, and thank you for all your great questions.
That's it for this episode of Joint Session Diverse Voices in New York State Cannabis. If you found today's discussion valuable, consider leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps more listeners find the show. Better yet, share it with colleagues, advocates, and anyone interested in the future of cannabis in New York. Joint Session is produced by me, Herb Barbeau, together with executive producer Robert Curtis from SimLab Media. Special thanks, as always, to Cannabis Wire. You can follow us on Instagram at jointsession.pod and on LinkedIn at Joint Session Podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or topic suggestions, reach out to me at herb.jointsession@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Herb Barbeau. Thanks for listening.